A lone soldier stands at a grave, drowned in the silence of his own devastation. His face, usually carved in stoicism, twists with something raw, not rage, not triumph, but a sorrow so deep it borders on the sacred. The man is naked snake. The grave belongs to the boss, mentor, comrade, the closest thing to a mother he ever had, and he was the one to kill her. He salutes, he weeps, and the world names him a hero. Beneath this iconic ending of Metal Gear Solid 3, Snake Eater, lies a deeper wound, not just personal but philosophical. What does it mean to betray the person you love most? Not out of malice or accident, but because history demands it. When choice is swallowed by necessity, when will blends beneath geopolitics, what remains of the self that carries out the act? This tension between love and betrayal, freedom and fate, finds a powerful echo in the writings of French philosopher and mystic Simone Weil. In her haunting essay The Iliad, or the Poem of Force, Weil argues that force, not love, not honor, not even human will, is the true protagonist of both epic and history. Seen in this light, Snake's betrayal is not an act of free will, but a mark of having become an instrument, not a man. The anguish on Snake's face, then, is more than grief. It is the instant he recognizes that betrayal has hollowed him out. He's no longer acting with love, nor against it, but beyond it, submitting to something larger, a war machine that requires myth, sacrifice, and legend to sustain itself. And so we must ask, if betrayal is dictated by history, is it betrayal at all? Or is it something worse? The collapse of moral distinction itself, where love and violence blur into a single motion, ordered from above and carried out by the broken. To understand Snake Eater, one must first understand the strange alchemy of Metal Gear itself. Conceived by auteur-designer Hideo Kojima, the series has always lived in an ambiguous space, part stealth action, part philosophical treatise, part anti-war satire. From its earliest iterations, Metal Gear has been as much about ideas as gameplay, using the language of espionage fiction not merely to entertain but to interrogate. At the heart of Kojima's vision lies a restless fascination with the machinery of war, both literal and symbolic. Across decades of titles, the series returns obsessively to nuclear deterrence, surveillance states and ideological manipulation, and the inheritance of violence. Kojima's work is a kind of interactive postmodernism, where characters, symbols, and even players are caught in recursive loops of meaning, media, and memory. War is never just war in Metal Gear. It is a theater of myth and misinformation, orchestrated by shadowy figures and faceless systems. Yet Kojima narratives resist neat political messaging. Instead they dwell in ambiguity, noble intentions curdle into corruption, revolution collapses into repression, heroes are reforged into weapons. Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty imagined truth itself as a weapon, anticipating the age of digital propaganda and algorithmic shaping of belief. Later entries like Peace Walker and The Phantom Pain fixate on the military-industrial complex, autonomous, evolving, indifferent to morality. Amid these sprawling conspiracies, however, Kojima never abandons the personal. His games are haunted by tragic figures, soldiers broken by duty, scientists disillusioned by their creations, idealists reduced to pawns. Snake Eater stands apart in this mythos, not by abandoning these themes but distilling them into something more intimate and elemental. Set in the Cold War, stripped of the futuristic exoskeletons and AI systems of later games, it returns to a simpler and therefore more brutal logic of geopolitics. Its jungle setting and analog technology suggest purity, but the moral terrain is no less treacherous. The story follows Naked Snake, a soldier sent to infiltrate Soviet territory, retrieve a defected scientist, and neutralize a nuclear threat. But the mission's true demand is not tactical but psychological. Snake must kill his mentor, their boss. That single arc defines not only the game's arc, but the entire Metal Gear saga. While later entries sprawl into postmodern labyrinths, Snake Eater embraces a more classical tragic tone. Its scope narrows to something almost Tolstoyan: one man, one woman, and one irreversible decision. In its restraint, in its return to the mythic, Snake Eater achieves an enduring emotional power, a war story reduced to its most devastating form. Simone Weil remains one of the most haunting and uncompromising figures of 20th century thought, a philosopher for whom ideas were never abstract, but lived realities. Born in Paris into a secular Jewish family of intellectuals, Weil distinguished herself early as a brilliant student of philosophy at the École Normale Supérieure, studying under the famed teacher Émile Cartier, but unlike many of her peers, she refused the safety of the ivory towers. She sought instead to share in the lives of the suffering. To understand oppression, she took jobs incognito in factories, enduring the same exhaustion and humiliation as the workers beside her. Weil's life was inseparable from her philosophy. In 1936, during the Spanish Civil War, she briefly joined the Republican forces. An accident in camp ended her service, but the war left an indelible mark. Suffering in combat and the way force annihilates human freedom became the central theme of her later work. During the Second World War, exiled in London, she worked with the Free French Resistance. Already weakened by tuberculosis, she chose to restrict her diet to what she believed was available to her occupied countrymen in France. In 1943, at the age of 34, she died not only from illness, but from self-starvation, an act that mirrored the extremity of her ethical commitments. Her legacy is often overshadowed by this radical self-denial, yet her ideas remain profoundly alive. Her writings spanned theology, political philosophy, and metaphysics, unified by a single conviction that justice begins with attention to suffering. In Gravity and Grace and the Need for Roots, she describes affliction or malheur as something deeper than pain or hardship. It is the collapse of human soul into thinghood, when one becomes an object in the eyes of others and even in one's own. Unlike many Marxists of her time, Weil rejected the idea that such suffering could be redeemed by history or revolution. She saw in fascism and communism alike a hunger for power disguised as justice, and she distrusted any movement willing to sacrifice individuals to her cause. To treat affliction as a means to an end, she argued, was to strip politics of its moral legitimacy. Her philosophy was at once mystical and uncompromising. She admired Plato and the Christian tradition, but refracted them through the brutal realities of industrial modernity and mechanized war. For a while, true justice required a kind of depersonalization, to see oneself not as a subject demanding rights, but a vessel for truth, radically attentive to the cries of others. And yet what makes her enduring is not reconciliation, but refusal. Her refusal to look away from suffering, her refusal to accept that affliction could ever be justified by history, and her refusal to surrender the dignity of seeing others without illusion. These refusals continue to shape conversations in ethics, theology, and political thought, and as we will see, they cast a piercing light on the tragedy at the heart of Snake Eater. Written in 1940 under the shadow of Nazi-occupied France, Simone Weil's The Iliad, or the Poem of Force, is a most urgent meditation on violence. Ostensibly an interpretation of Homer's epic, the essay moves far beyond literary criticism. It is a theological and philosophical treatise hidden in the language of philology, an indictment of empire, the lament for the ways violence dissolves the human soul. The Iliad recounts a brief, brutal period of the Trojan War, a conflict sparked by desire, sustained by honor, and defined by vengeance. Its story orbits the wrath of Achilles, the grief of Hector, the arrogance of Agamemnon, the cruelty of gods who treat mortals as toys. Heroes clash, cities burn, and names become legend. Yet beneath it all runs a steady current of destruction. The poem records not only glory, but the disintegration of human dignity. Weil's claim is stark. The true protagonist of the Iliad is not Achilles or Hector, nor even the gods, it is force itself. By force, Weil means modern brute violence. Force is whatever turns a person into a thing. It is the power of war, empire, ideology to reduce the subject to an object, a corpse, a pawn, a machine. When a spear pierces the body, the warrior ceases to be a man. He becomes matter, dragged in the dust behind the chariot. But the wielder of force is no less deformed. To use force is to risk being possessed by it, enslaved by the very power one thinks one commands. Force, Weil argues, is indifferent. It rewards neither virtue nor vice. It ascends on all alike. The righteous and the wicked, the soldier and the civilian, the victor and the vanquished. What makes Homer's poem morally remarkable, in her eyes, is his refusal to romanticize war. The Iliad does not lie, it shows the stripping away of subjectivity from Ares' side, reducing heroes and kings alike to stone. This is not heroic tragedy, but the slow petrification of human beings into functions of violence. We see them like leaves in the wind, Weil writes of the warriors. The desires, fears and laws are raised by the logic of conflict. Homer does not moralize the battlefield. He simply witnesses what war does to human beings. Weil's insight is chilling in its simplicity. To be a victim of force is to be turned into stone. To use force is to become enslaved by it. In such a world, agency is an illusion. Action becomes compulsion. Choice collapses into necessity. Everyone, in some sense, is already lost. Composed as France fell to occupation, the essay is both political cry and spiritual lament. But Weil's vision extends beyond the battlefield. Force operates wherever institutions reduce individuals to roles, functions or statistics. It is present in armies and factories, in bureaucracies and propaganda. It acts through people, but it does not originate in them. In this way force takes on mythic quality, not supernatural but suprapersonal, a logic that governs human lives from above. The philosopher Peter Winch once noted that Weil's essay stands apart from pacifist writings of her time because it is not utopian. It offers no cure. It doesn't suggest war can be ended by diplomacy or that history bends towards justice. It asks only that we witness, that we attend to the annihilation of the human under force's command and refuse to disguise it with noble lies. Later thinkers found echoes of Weil everywhere. Giorgio Agamben's notion of bare life, life reduced to killable, parallels her vision of human beings turned to things. Hannah Arendt's claim that violence destroys both speech and world-making aligns with Weil's sense of war's erasure of meaning. But Weil's distinctiveness lies in her attention to the soul. She was not content to describe what happens to bodies under force, but asked what happens to interior life when it is forgotten. For her, the Iliad is not a tale of great men, but of broken ones. Its greatness lies in its unblinking gaze. It does not celebrate the victors. It does not rescue its heroes from despair. It only describes what force does. It reduces the world to ash, and leaves that ash clinging to all who touch it. What then do Weil's writing reveal when projected onto Snake Eater? Well, in Snake Eater both Naked Snake and the boss are caught in this machinery. Neither acts as a free agent. Both are subsumed into the logic of geopolitics, compelled to perform deeds that annihilate their personal desires and moral autonomy. The boss's staged execution as a traitor, though she dies loyal to her country, is not simply tragic, it is mechanical, ritualistic, a sacrifice demanded to stabilize a global narrative. Her humanity is discarded so the illusion of order may be preserved. The player's embodiment of Snake sharpens the dilemma. Are we making choices or carrying out script already written by power? Kojima blurs the line between agency and programming. Between the soldier and the weapon, in Snake Eater, Snake is less a man than a node in a military apparatus, conditioned and deployed. This mirrors Weil's observation. Force does not distinguish between victim and perpetrator, both are dehumanized. Snake's killing of the boss is not catharsis, but fate sealing itself. His grief becomes the seed of transformation into Big Boss. a man estranged from ideology, yet forged by it. His tears fall not only for his mentor but for himself, for the realization that he too has been made an instrument, shaped, used and destined to be discarded. Kojima phrased ideology itself as a kind of possession. His soldiers behave not as free subjects, but as vessels animated by historical imperatives and ideological ghosts. The boss embodies this most vividly. Her body is inscribed with meanings not of her choosing: traitor, patriot, mother, weapon. She ceases to be a person and becomes instead a myth engineered for political ends. This treatment of agency links to Kojima's broader critique of military ideology. His protagonists may rebel, but they are always already complicit. Snake's journey in Snake Eater is not liberation, but initiation into the brutal truths of power. In this, the game echoes Weil's central claim: war does not merely kill, it petrifies. It fossilizes the human spirit into roles, then discards the person beneath them. In Snake Eater, war is not backdrop but actor. It is force as Weil defined it, total, impersonal and devastating. And in Kojima's hands, no one, not even a hero, escapes its touch. The boss and Snake, though larger than life, are reduced to instruments. Their tragedy is not that they fail, but their very success requires the obliteration of their selves. In Snake Eater, betrayal does not arrive as a shocking twist. It unfolds as inevitability, a structural mandate dictated by the logic of war. Simone Weil's vision of force as history's true protagonist helps us see why. Under the reign of force, betrayal ceases to be a moral failure, it becomes necessity. The game's central act makes this plain. Snake and the boss enact mirrored performances of betrayal as loyalty, each shaped not by volition but by command. The boss must die branded a traitor in order to preserve international order. Snake must kill her to prove his allegiance. Neither chooses, both obey. Philosopher Emmanuel Levinas, who absorbed Weil's influence, sharpens these points. When force dictates action, the self ceases to be a moral subject. One becomes only a conduit of obligation. Weil herself warned of his impossibility of moral coherence. In Reflections on War, she argued that the idea of choosing sides is often an illusion, for every side demands sacrifice that silence personal ethics. Thus, in Snake Eater, betrayal is not the opposite of loyalty. It is loyalty transfigured by the violence of history. To be loyal under force is to betray, and to betray is to serve. That collapse of distinction is what makes the ending so devastating. Naked Snake emerges from his mission no longer a man, but an embodiment of force, obedient, hollow, and broken. Cold War stories often recast human beings as symbolic actors within larger systems. In such stories, the person is weaponized, repurposed for history's demands. Snake Eater belongs squarely into this tradition. Its characters are not merely shaped by history, they are obliterated by it. The game's true protagonist then is not the soldier we control, nor even the towering presence of the boss. It is the Cold War itself. Not the backdrop but the engine of causality. As in Homer, no one emerges untouched. Yet this war isn't about conquest or ambition, it is about myth-making. The United States must preserve its image, the Soviet Union must be contained, the spectre of nuclear war must be at peace with blood, and so a mentor and a prodigy are sacrificed. Snake Eater is not then a spy thriller, it is tragedy, not the ancient tragedy of hubris and downfall, but a modern one, where individuals are destroyed not by their flaws, but the perfect compliance with a world that no longer allows for freedom. Simone Weil, writing amid the ashes of collapsing Europe, recognized this pattern as the great moral structure of modernity. The illusion of choice masks the machinery of compulsion, and what does this machinery spit out? A man stripped of moral clarity, hailed as a hero, destined to become a villain. Not through corruption, but because nothing else was left for him to be. The question that lingers is no longer about strategy or allegiance. It's the question Weil leaves us with, and the question Snake Eater dares to ask without answering. If loyalty and betrayal are both dictated by force, then what does it mean to be human in war?